like the Lord's just put something on my heart. Just been, you're thinking about this. We're all on lockdown. We've got this invisible, enemy that seems to be keeping us all in our houses. And hi, I see you guys out there. We've got this invisible enemy that we keep watching the news and we keep seeing all the reports and everybody's, I'm watching pastors afraid of their churches, closing, afraid of not being able to pay their bills. I see people trying to stand in faith or trying to stay faithful. I see there's this wavering and this difficulty to stand in the midst of the storm. And it's like there's this thing where it's like it's about money or it's about health, and everything feels threatened and everybody feels worried about it. And I'm jumping on here today just to share this quick word. I really believe this is going to speak to some folks here. But what we need to understand is that nothing has changed in the mind and the intention and the heart of God. We need to understand some things about who God is. We need to understand that God is eternal. We need to understand that God is not shaken by the events of time. We got to understand that God is not surprised and shocked, that God is not looking from his throne at what's going on right now, and that God is just perplexed over the coronavirus announcement. God is not sitting up in heaven right now wondering what is he going to possibly do to deal with the coronavirus. He's not worried about it. God knows what he's going to do. In the mind of God, he is altogether wise. He understands exactly what is going on the earth. He understands the why the things are happening the way they are, and he understands what's going on, and he understands that he has allowed this to take place to an extent. You got to understand that that things don't just happen, that God understands what's going on, that permission has to be allowed, that thresholds have to be crossed in the spirit, that things have to be given and allowed. This has to be just and righteous, that God has to allow things to be what they are. And we have to understand who God is in all of this. We got to understand that he's still your God, that he still loves you, and he absolutely looks at you, and you're still the apple of his eye. You're still in the cleft of the rock. You're still in his hand. He still upholds you by his right hand of his power. We understand that he's with you, that he loves you, that he's our strong tower that we can run into. We got to understand that he still stands and reigns supreme, that he is still God and he's still on the throne, that he is still the creator of all life and all that is. We need to understand who we're talking about today. I understand we can weigh everything and we can be worried about him with all the reports and all the concerns. And I get it, and they're all real and they're all there. I get it. But man, ultimately, our lives belong to God. And I'm telling you, we need to look up to him. He's the one that our help comes from. He is the one that is able to make a way where there seems to be no way at all. We need to understand something else about God. We need to understand that when God was in creation, when the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters, over the face of the deep, when the earth was without form and void, and darkness covered the face of the earth, that the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the deep, that in the mind of God, he had already saw forward in time. He had already saw from one day until the end of all days. He'd already seen how time is going to walk this thing out. So he had already made a decision, he had already made certain decisions in heaven, which is that the lamb slain from the foundation of the world, anticipating the needs of the earth, because God knows all things. And because of that, he knows the things that are going on with you. He knows exactly what's happening. He knows where you are. And in the mind of God, you were on his mind, and he knew you. Before you were in your mother's womb, yes, but before all time began, you were in the mind of God, that he knew you, was acquainted with who you are, and what you were going to even be like, and what time period that you were going to be on the earth. And we need to understand these things, and we need to understand why this is important. That you were born, and that you were born in this certain time period, in this space and time, that you were born in due season, that there was a due season for you, that you were born in this season for a purpose and time. That this just like the scriptures talk about, that he was, for such a time as this. Who was to say, if you were not brought forward for such a time as this, that this is your time? That for such a time as this, that there's something that you carry on the inside of you, something supernatural, something spiritual, something from the other side, something that God has given you of a spiritual quality that's inside of you, a word perhaps, something to say in this time, something to say to the people of this time period, something that's a word that has come from heaven for this season and this space of time that people need to hear. That there's something that you carry on the inside of you for this season and time, and understanding that you are held by God, understanding that He loves you, that He's got His eye on you, that He's numbered every hair on your head, He's kept every tear in a vial, everything about you is numbered in His book. He understands you. He knows what's going on in the earth. He knows the things that you don't know. He understands when this is going to stop, and you got to understand something about God. God is able to stop this thing anytime He wants to. God can come along and make any changes. He can come along and He can just make it disappear if He wanted to. God can orchestrate things the way He wants. He can soften hearts. He can harden hearts. He can get in there and sovereignly make choices and decisions and move things and shift things. God is able. So the ability of God is not what we're talking about. He is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all that we could ask or do. What it's about is about in the mind and the wisdom of God. What is He allowing to take place? What is happening here? What do the people of God need to learn from this experience? What do I need to learn from this experience? I need to learn that this is all about who God is and not about what everybody's doing all around. It's not about people. It's not about what the world's doing. It's about understanding who God is and understanding that you are not of this world, but that there's a Beulah land that you're going to. There's a place that we're headed to. That Jesus went to prepare a place for us that He might receive us there Himself. That's where we're going. When Paul talks about I'm torn between going where Christ is, which is far better, and remaining here in this, because being with Jesus is far better. So what is it that we are afraid of exactly? Like when I'm talking about the martyr series, when I've been going through the martyr series, I'm talking about dying well. I'm talking about laying your life down, and that the people died well because they were convinced as they went to burn at the stake. They were convinced that as soon as their spirits left their bodies, to be absent from the body was to be present with the Lord. They understood that you can't kill me because I'm already dead. I belong to somebody else. I'm married to God. My name is written in the Lamb's book of life. And so you get to a point where you shift your focus to kingdom and eternal mindedness, and you begin to recognize that in the mind of God, that He's seen this all along, that He understood this coronavirus was going to happen, but this is just one season. Think this will pass, and then other seasons will come. But what will we learn from this? Where will we change from this? What decisions will we make as a people to become more wise, to become more concise about the way we do things? What will we learn as far as being trusting in our God and who He is and what He's able to do? So we need to understand that this was our time period. This is for such a time as this. And we need to understand that God is able, even in this strange season, to use you to be a voice to people. A voice. We need to be a people that aren't just worried about the news and about the numbers growing. I mean, it matters, and sure, pay attention if you want to, and that's okay, and I look at them. But the thing is that what we have to really put our focus on, our faith into, is not the news and not the statistics. We put our faith into the God who saved you, to the God that is able to get you through, and He's able to make a way where there seems to be no way at all. That all things come together for the good. He made a promise. He said all things come together for the good, for those that love God and are called according to His purpose. So if He can cause all things to come together for His good, He can cause this thing right here to come together for His good. If He can make all things come together for your good, He can make this thing come together for your good. I mean, if this is the thing we need to understand, that God is able to shift and change and move and bring things into a place where perhaps beforehand you thought, oh man, perhaps beforehand you thought, oh, I don't know what God's going to do. But we need to understand that in this time period, that this is about reaching forward. It's about being mindful, eternally mindful. It's about recognizing who your God is and trusting Him to be who He is. And understanding that no matter what God allows to happen, we need to understand that even with Job and even with the story of Peter, that they needed permission. Satan needed permission from God to do what he did. That our footsteps are ordered by God. Your footsteps are ordered by God, that He knows your steps, He's acquainted with your steps, and He leads you and He guides you and He takes care of you. And like the said, the Psalm says in Psalms 23, though you walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Though all these, fall on your left and fall on your your right, I will fear no evil. This is something that we have to reach for. It's a spiritual dynamic. You have to reach out of the flesh and you got to reach into the spirit. It's a place of faith. It's a position of faith in our mind that we got to understand that in the mind of God, He's watching over the earth. He understands exactly what's transpiring. He knows what the statistics are. He knows what diabolical things perhaps may be going on around this. He understands what's happening. God knows, and God is going to make changes based on that. And this thing will come to an end. And when this comes to an end, will we as the people of God, will we have grown? As the people of God, will we have changed as the people of God? Will we have become more kingdom-minded? Will we have dug our roots deeper into God? Will we have become more acquainted with the Spirit of God? Will we have become more acquainted with our necessity and reliance on who God is as these days continue to grow darker and darker and darker? Because yes, this season will pass, but there will be other waves of seasons, and we need to be a people that stand strong in the things of God. Amen. I just wanted to jump on there. I wanted to share that with you really quick. I actually had a completely different thing I was going to share, and God just kind of dumped that on me. But we need to understand that in the mind of God, He saw this time period before time began, and that none of this has taken God by surprise. Your God is not rattled. Your God has not rattled. Amen. You guys have a very blessed rest of your Sunday. I know there's a whole bunch of videos going on out there. I didn't want to keep it long. Bless you guys.